Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city on this Tuesday. Hope that work week's off to a good start. Appreciate it out with us on 104.5 ESPN. Baton Rouge, Glen West in 30 minutes. LSU and Arkansas play tonight. We might talk about that. We'll definitely talk some baseball with Glen West of Go 24/7 coming up at 1:30. Sharif Ishak at the bottom of hour number 2. We got some baseball to get to. Where do the Saints rank in the power rankings moving into the offseason, according to ESPN, Fox, and Sporting News? Some consensus there. We'll talk about it coming up here in 15 minutes. So plenty to do here on this Tuesday. Let's crank it up the way we do every day with our opening drive.
Welcome to the big league.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive. Presented by Fabry Chevrolet GMC in St. Francisville.
You know, it's not technically football time right now. There's no significant recruiting period open. The portal has been closed. There have not been any additions. Spring practice is not upon us yet. But I'm still putting out football content on LouisianaSports.net, going through our portal profiles and going through every single player that LSU added and writing one profile up every single day with just some nuts and bolts and a projection on where that player potentially could impact LSU in 2026. And something today, as I was writing my piece on Stacey Gage, kind of dawned on me. And I wanted to kind of expound upon it and thought it was a good thing to kind of crank things up today with. I remember going out to LSU football practices in the infancy of my writing career. So you're talking 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, those years. And there would just be so many running backs. There would be so many running backs on scholarship. You'd have your, senior and junior, the guy that's the starter, but then you'd always have, a couple of 4-star freshmen, maybe a young 5-star, and those guys weren't going to transfer at that point in time. So you kind of see how it was going to extrapolate out over the time to come. And it was just always a position that LSU stockpiled with elite level talent. And most of it was from the state of Louisiana. You look back over the course of that Les Miles era of football, and the best backs largely came from the state of Louisiana. Like Spencer Ware was from Ohio, but most of the other guys, your Jeremy Hill, Kenny Hilliard, Leonard Fournette, Darius Geis, Michael Ford, Darrell Williams, like going on, like all those guys are from Louisiana. Keelan Williams was from Louisiana. Charles Scott was from Louisiana. Jacob Hester was from Louisiana. Like, you get the point. It was very Louisiana-heavy position, very talent-rich position. And LSU always had depth. And it's dawned on me that over the last couple of years, some of this is out of LSU's control, but there's been almost no depth at the running back position. Now, it's not LSU's fault as a football program that Trey Holly got caught up in an investigation that dragged on for multiple years in Union Parish, and he ended up at Southern. It's not really LSU's fault that last year JT Lindsey, right as camp is beginning, turns himself in on accessory to a murder after the fact. Now he's in the transfer portal. He moves on. But, like, some of that stuff is just not really LSU's fault. But you didn't have a lot of depth, and that's why you had to keep moving Juwan Johnson around at running back, and then he's at safety, and then he's at running back, and then he's at quarterback, and then he's at running back, and just the depth wasn't there. And now, kind of shockingly to me, you've got a lot of depth at running back. One, it was vital to keep Harlem Berry around. I believe Harlem Berry is a huge talent that's got a bright future at LSU. You didn't see a lot of it this year because LSU was atrocious at running the ball. We've discussed this ad nauseum. But they were awful. But I saw some things I really liked in the Ole Miss game, for instance, in the Texas A&M game. You saw the burst. You saw a little bit of speed, ability to make guys miss, running between the tackles, and that's as small and underdeveloped as he's going to be as a college player. It was huge to get him back. And you assumed that Caden Durham would be gone. Like, that was my assumption. Maybe I shouldn't say you assumed. You may not have assumed. I assumed that Caden Durham would be gone. Caden Durham decided to come back. And that gives you, in my estimation, a very, very quality 1-2. Is it Fournette and Geis? Probably not. Is it the 2011 running back room that just ran for $1 billion on everybody? Well, probably not in terms of style and proven depth and talent. But it's a good base for a running back room. And at that point, you had to go out and supplement. And obviously, I think the prize gem here is Kejuan Lacey. And he didn't go in the portal. We'll never know what happens if Ole Miss loses to Georgia. But they didn't. They won the game. He didn't go in the portal. So then LSU had to go out and go, okay, all you folks in the portal, we've got two guys who essentially were LSU starters last year. Anybody want to come, be like third, fourth, fifth string? And they opened the doors, and you got some guys in. And you've got some talent that has come in. Like Dylan Jones from Wisconsin was a starter for them. You turn on the tape, like it looks pretty good for a third string back. I'm not asking him to come in and run for 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns. You're looking for the third back. Well, the Wisconsin starter, that's a pretty good place to go for a third team back. Oh, by the way, he's a redshirt sophomore this year. He has 3 years of eligibility remaining. But you didn't stop there. You went and got Racine Guillory, who was once a 4-star recruit, one of the best backs in Texas, reclassified, ends up at Utah. He comes in. He's a redshirt freshman. He's got 4 years left. You went and got Rod Gainey from Charlotte. Not physically or on the tape going to blow you away. I'm talking about a fifth string back here. And oh, by the way, he's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. He's a redshirt sophomore. And then Stacey Gage, who I mentioned, comes in from UCF. He was pretty productive for the Knights this past year. And is a redshirt sophomore with 3 years of eligibility remaining. You've got 4 guys you brought in the portal. All 4 are either redshirt sophomores or redshirt freshmen. They have at least 3 years of eligibility remaining, and in Guillory's case, it's 4. And then Barry's got 3 years left, and Durham's got 2 years left. Now, I am not naive enough to sit here and suggest that LSU is going to keep all 6 of these guys through their senior years. Of course not. They won't keep all 6 of these guys on the 2027 team. I know that. You know that. I'm not trying to speculate anything on the other hand. But I do like the fact that you got a lot of guys, a lot of eligibility left on the roster. You've got now 6 backs that have played in a D1 game on your roster. That is healthy. That is not, okay, well, Durham's banged up, but he can play some. And Barry's a true freshman, so let's get him out there. And is Juwan Johnson still around? Okay, that's fine. Like, this is legitimate here. And this is my working assumption. I will work off of this until I'm proven wrong, okay? I believe Lane Kiffin, just by showing up in Baton Rouge, his mere presence and installation of his offense is going to mean that LSU can run the football. That's just, I'm going to work off of that assumption until I'm proven wrong. Now, I had an assumption when Brian Kelly came in that LSU would be really, really, really good on the offensive line because he was at Notre Dame. And it looked like, oh, you brought in Will Campbell and Emory Jones in that first class, and you identified, bringing in Miles Frazier, who played well, and Garrett Dellinger developed, and yeah, he's got this going, and this next group of guys will be really, really good. And it turned out that you couldn't run the ball at all. So that assumption turned out to be wrong. So I'm leaving the door open for that. But I look at Lane Kiffin's rushing offense. And this past year, Ole Miss was 6th in the SEC. The year before that, 5th in the SEC. The year before that, 5th in the SEC. The year before that, they led the SEC. The year before that, they were 2nd in the SEC. And his first year at Ole Miss as the head coach, taking over a bad program, he led the SEC in rushing. Again, that's 1st, second, first, fifth, sixth. And the team that was sixth went to the playoffs and went to the national semifinal. So my assumption is going to be based on the tempo, the scheme, the play calling, all of that. LSU will be able to run the ball. And I look at the backs and I go, you finally have the proper numbers at the position. It's not a star-studded group. They're not a bunch of first-team All-Americans on this list. But I've watched Caden Durham become a freshman All-SEC player. I've watched Harlan Berry make explosive plays and be the number one back in the country. And I'm not asking these guys that they've brought in who are young in their college careers to be game-changing starting pieces. I'm asking them to be depth pieces. The one thing that I would look at with this list, and I would go, and just kind of nod my head a little bit, is you don't have a single back on this list that's over 210 pounds. There's not a physical presence. I would prefer one of these guys fit that bill. Now, Caden Durham is not small. He's short. He's not small. And Dylan Jones is short. He's not small. And he runs physically. And Caden Durham breaks tackles. And so I'm not here to suggest that LSU's got a bunch of guys that run around that are 5'8", $170, that are track stars, and they're just trying to run it that way. But they don't have a tailback that's 6'2", 234, that just can lower his shoulders and make somebody's day miserable. They don't have a guy that looks like Spencer Ware, that looks like Caleb Jackson, though he didn't necessarily run that way, but looks like Caleb Jackson, that looks like Charles Scott, that looks like a big, physical, hulking back. Kejuan Lacey is a big physical back. I actually didn't look up when I was doing my prep for this what he's listed at, but I can find that pretty quickly. Kejuan Lacey at Ole Miss is listed at 5'11", 210, so right on the threshold I was saying. Like, they don't have a back that's north of that. But I do think that Jones and Durham run pretty physically, and I'll be curious to see what Harlan Berry looks like after a full offseason in this program. But it's a lot of guys that kind of profile similarly. A little bit leaner, good speed, out in space, can probably catch the ball. And maybe that fits Kiffin's offense better. He knows. He knows what he's looking for. He's got a lot of guys that look that part. So I'm excited about LSU's running back room. I'm excited about the fact that when LSU lines up against Clemson on Labor Day weekend, I'll tell you this right now, in February, when they line up in Tiger Stadium against Clemson, I am going to work under the assumption that day LSU's going to run it on these guys. I haven't thought that in 3 years, 4 years. I will think that on Labor Day weekend, and that's an exciting thing. And I didn't quite realize just how much depth they had built up in that running back space because the portal goes so fast and furious. But when I looked up who I had to write today for the player profile, it was Stacey Gage. I was like, man, that's like 5 running backs I've done. Turns out 6 total in the transfer portal that LSU pulled in and now has retained. So good stuff on the running back room for Lane Kiffin and his staff. All right, we're off and running here on this Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We'll talk to our guy Glen West about baseball when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Ochsner, it's Heart Month. It is Heart Month in February. It's a great time to focus on your overall health and your wellness. You know, heart disease is the number one cause of death for men and women, but it's often preventable. If you avoid smoking, limit alcohol, stay active, exercise regularly, put more fruits, vegetables, grains in your diet, manage your stress, try to get enough sleep. All these can be huge when it concerns your heart health. Regular checkups matter too. Early detection and guidance can keep you on track for a healthy heart. So make your health a priority this Heart Month in February and schedule your primary care appointment at ochsner.org/BRprimary. These small steps today can lead to a stronger heart tomorrow. Check in with your doctors and make sure you're on track for a healthy 2026. Locations throughout Louisiana. You can also find them online at ochsner.org.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Weather's warming up a little bit over the next couple of weeks. Awesome news for baseball out at the box. Also means the grass is going to start growing pretty quick here. So if you're looking to get that new mower, look no further than Gotro's Outdoor Power. New partner here at the Hunt Palmer Show. Had a chance to sit down with the Gotro fam back last week. They've got an incredible location down And Gonzalez got another awesome one in Baton Rouge as well. They've got the largest Hustler inventory in the state by far. So if you're looking for a zero turn, you want to get behind the wheel of that brand new mower as grass season, summer, spring is upon us. Go check them out at Gotros Outdoor Power. They've been in business 22 years in Baton Rouge and Gonzales. You can find them online at GotrosOnline.com. The customer service is second to none there at Gotros. You can buy one of those mowers from the big box store, but what happens when you walk out the door? Do you get that personal touch? Do you get that delivery? Do you get that firsthand service where they'll go pick your mower up, bring it in, handle the parts? You probably don't, but you will at Gotros. Check them out at both their locations, Baton Rouge and Gonzales. Family owned and operated. You can also find them online at GotrosOnline.com. All right, let's talk a little Saints here before we get to Glen West. I inaccurately teased that Glen was coming up in this segment. He's 1:30 every single week, and I just made a mistake. But that's okay because we're talking some Saints. And I was interested to go up and look at the power rankings. And John Seigler put a piece up at SaintsWire.com on this, where the national outlets had the Saints entering the offseason. This is not an indication of where the Saints are for next season, because everyone's aware there's a lot to go into before next season. You got a full free agency cycle. You've got a full NFL draft. You got a lot of roster composition that's got to be put together. There are new coaches that are still filling out staffs. Like, we're just not quite done here yet. This is kind of entering the offseason where these national outlets have the New Orleans Saints. And most of this has to do with what we saw on the field this past year. ESPN ranks the Saints number 26 in the league. Fox ranks the Saints number 26 in the league. And Sporting News ranks the Saints number 25 in the league. Every single outlet ranks the Saints bottom of the NFC South. Now, keep in mind, the Saints finished at the bottom of the NFC South. So before we want to go nuts, like, that is technically what their record said. But everyone arrives at a different record a different way. The Bucs got to their record one way, which is having the absolute bottom fall out in November. And the Saints got to theirs by being perhaps the worst team in the NFL for 8 weeks and finished far from it. Now, you didn't finish the way you would like to on the field against Atlanta, but you did win games down the stretch. You did find a quarterback. You did have a quarterback that you found playing in really adverse circumstances in terms of the personnel he had as available and playing well in spite of that. You had a first-year defensive coordinator take his team from really poor early in the season to a very, very good NFL defense that by the end of the season was a top 10 NFL defense. If you just look at the stretch of games at the end of the year. So I think it's completely fair to label the Saints in the mid-20s based on this past season. But I also think that if you were to talk to these folks that put this together and say, okay, project that out to next year, project that out for 2 years, I think the Saints would be on the good side of that for everyone. It's interesting to sit back now that there's enough space between the last Saints game and now, and there's enough space between now and the next time the Saints play. And just take a deep breath and go, okay, where actually is this thing? Because you can get caught up in the slog of that first 10 games. Just loss after loss after loss after loss. Like, that wears on you. And you can get caught in that euphoria of the last month. But the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I think that Kellen Moore, Brandon Staley, and Tyler Shuck's performance in the last 6 weeks of the season is enough positive juice to make you feel like this ship's pointed in the right direction. I think the rest of that roster and what you did the first 10 weeks of the season, at this point, you can look at that and go, okay, that's still an indication we got a long way to go. You're not going to start by beating the Seahawks and beating Buffalo and beating the Rams, and you're not going to start by beating the best teams in the league. But you can start by beating the worst teams in the league, which the Saints did. And then you can work your way towards where you're trying to get, which is towards the top of the NFC at this point. And while that was a really fun last month, I think when you look at ESPN putting the Saints at 26, Fox putting the Saints at 26, Sporting News putting the Saints at 25, and them all ranking the Saints at the bottom of the division, I think it's still okay to look at this and go, we still got a pretty good ways to go here. I would suggest you took 3 or 4 steps in the right direction this year. Head coach did a good job. Defensive coordinator did a good job. Quarterback did a good job. Rookies did a good job. Okay, all that's the most important stuff. I would rather all of that go really well than DeMario Davis make first team All-Pro. I'd rather all of that go great than, Cam Jordan making the Pro Bowl. You want the youth to step forward, and they did. But at the same time in the offseason, we can still look at this and go, you're still not that close to the top of the league. You've got a lot to do to get close. And so not to suggest this is a total bucket of cold water, but maybe just a sobering splash of water in the face. Good last month, steps forward, yes. Close to the top, no. But realistically, to put a bow on this, and this is what I said when the season ended, this was about as good as the first season could go. About as good as the first season could go. You could have kept some more guys healthy. I could have seen more from Devon Vele. I could have seen more from your young backs. Devin Neal got hurt at the end of the season. I could have seen more from the interior of our offensive line. But all in all, it was really good. And you're still not good enough. So I think as time moves forward in the offseason, at some point there will be a bit of a shift in my view. Maybe you as a Saints fan, maybe not, but in my view, a shift from, okay, that was really, really positive. Now what? Now what are you going to do? What steps can you take forward from there? Because you realize that you're climbing a mountain here, and the Saints were damn near the bottom of that mountain. You're only at the first base camp here. You got a long way to, you can't even see the top of the mountain from where the Saints are. And that's indicated in these rankings. So I think, again, this is not an August conversation. It's a February conversation. Right now, how do the Saints get from 25 and 26? How do you get to 12? You're not going from 26 to 2. How do you go from 26 to 12? And if you go from 26 to 12 this year, because Shuck plays really well, because you've extended Olave and he's a number 1, because your first-round pick that you took in the top 10 this year looks like a star, because Quincy Riley and Jonas Sanker and Kelvin Banks and Taliesin Fuaga are linchpins in what you're doing, because Danny Stutzman made 112 tackles. That is the direction I want to go. And oh, by the way, while all those things happen, did you beat the team that ended up winning the NFC? Did you beat 3 different division winners? Did you beat 2 different division winners? Did you avoid the absolute whitewashing that Seattle gave you early in the 2025 season? Are these the steps you've taken to go from 26 to 12? That's where I am right now with the Saints. And because I think if you going from 26 to 12 is really doable. It's really, really doable. Going from 12 to 1 or 2 is really, really hard. The easy part is getting out of the muck and into the mix. Going from in the mix to the cream of the crop is a hard climb. But this part is doable with good decisions, good contracts, and development. And I would stand to reason, I think there's a good chance the Saints can go from 26 to 12 this year. That's right on the periphery of the playoffs and in the mix, beating the worst teams in the league, playing with the middle-class teams, and perhaps upsetting some of the better teams in the league. 12 gets you, that's what 9-8, 9-8, 10-7. You do that, I think you'll be thinking in the next offseason, okay, how do we go from 12-2? How do we go from 12-1? And I think that's a reasonable path to take. It was really fun at the end of the Saints season last year to see them ascend out of disaster. But that ranking you should look at that and go, oh yeah, we still have like a lot of things to got to fix. We'll see how they start fixing them now that the offseason is upon everybody. Jordan, 26-12, how do we feel about it?
I feel great about it. I think it's very accomplishable. I think you don't want to fall in the trap that the Commanders fell in last offseason. You want to be more like people look at it differently, but I want to be more like the Detroit Lions. It's kind of crazy to say that, but I feel like they were a good model. I don't think you can do what Seattle did and just hit every pick and everybody's an all-pro and all that. But I feel like you can do the Detroit Lions approach. You are building through the draft, but also you're starting to change the culture. We're starting to get that nasty Derek Carr, Dennis Allen stink off us. We finally took a nice shower. We got up out of the slums, got to a nice hotel, cleaned ourselves up. We kind of relapsed again at the end of the season, but we're clean right now, and you just got to keep going forward. But just don't fall into that trap of the Commanders. Go pay money to all these old guys. Think you can try and make it. No. Be patient. Stay the course. I think that you got to hit this first round pick. Got to hit this one. But
needs to be a potential star.
Huge.
I don't even care what position he plays. Just make that happen.
Yes.
We'll see. Glen West talking Tigers next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
First American Bank and Trust. First American Bank and Trust. Looking for a commercial loan? First American Bank and Trust. Looking for a residential loan, personal loan? First American Bank and Trust. Because when you're looking, who do you want making that decision about your loan? Do you want somebody who looks to you as a line item from Seattle and going, okay, huh? Or do you want somebody that's in your community, whose kids go to school with your kids, whose kids play soccer with your kids, who you see at church on Sundays? That's who you find at First American Bank and Trust. 25 locations throughout Southeast Louisiana, and every decision is made locally. The management teams at First American Bank and Trust branches average 25 years with the bank. It's a positive culture. It's a neighborhood feel. It's a community feel. But because they've got those 25 locations, they're able to help you with that commercial loan. They're able to help you with that personal loan. Trust the folks at First American Bank and Trust. They're part of your community, no matter where you are in Southeast Louisiana, all the way Tangipahoa and St. Tammany down to St. John, Lafourche, Terrebonne. They are here for you. It's First American Bank and Trust. First American Bank and Trust.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
LSU and Arkansas tonight at 8 o'clock from the Assembly Center. LSU and Milwaukee, 2 o'clock on Friday from the box. That's what's coming up this week. It's 4-game week. I guess, how would you say that? It's a 3-game weekend, I guess, and they play on Monday. I don't know if you can. I'm not going to try to shoehorn Monday into a weekend. I don't think that's going to. I don't think that's going to. I don't think that's people going to play too well to that. So I guess 3-game weekend and then a 2-game midweek next week for LSU baseball. Glen West will be there for all of it. He's senior writer for Go 24/7 covering the Tigers. Joins us on Tuesdays. Glen, how are you?
Doing well, Hunt. How about yourself?
Doing just fine. We'll get to baseball here. Let's couple on the basketball squad. LSU gets a lead against Georgia back on Saturday, and then it just slowly slips away, and Georgia really controlled the second half of that game. What's your sense on energy level, enthusiasm, vibes around the basketball team at this point?
Yeah, I mean, without being in the locker room, it's really hard to tell because they're just saying a lot of the same stuff publicly. Yeah. I mean, it's just a lot of the same messaging from both players and the coaches. And, if that's truly how they're feeling and, they just moving on to the next game and putting this last one behind them and, learning from the last game's mistakes. I mean, it's just a lot of the same kind of rhetoric that we're hearing right now. And unfortunately, it's a lot of the same stuff that keeps happening in these games, too. I mean, LSU is never going to be a sharpshooting team from three. They've got to figure out a way to close that gap in the three-point line and the discrepancy there. That game this last weekend, they got doubled up on three-point makes. They gave up 12 offensive rebounds in the second half. They weren't very aggressive on the boards there in the final 20 minutes. They tried to claw their way back into that game, and this Georgia made them pay for every single mistake that they made in the second half. They committed, I think, 8 or 9 turnovers in the second half, and Georgia was either hitting threes or getting transition buckets on the other end. So it's just a lot of the same stuff here with this team when, they get down or when they give up a lead or when they give up a big run. It's just a lot of the same stuff that keeps biting them.
How do they stop Darius Acuff tonight?
I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine, I guess. I think I went back and I started looking at the game from this last time they played Arkansas a few weeks ago, and it's just it was a very sloppy game, I think, for Arkansas. It just was not a very clean game for those guys, but especially from outside of Acuff, they had nobody really contributing. I mean, Acuff was like their big scorer, but LSU is probably going to be down De'Don Thomas this game. If I had to guess, they had him in that game a few weeks ago. They had 5 different players scoring double figures in that game a few weeks ago, and they were able to kind of take some of the aggression and some of the energy to Arkansas a few weeks ago. So if they can kind of match that and play a little bit more high energy for 40 minutes, maybe they have a chance, but I'm not betting on it. And they also gave up a 50-point half in the second half against Arkansas a few weeks ago. That's been a common theme for this team as well, whether it's the first or the second half. They've been giving up too many points in either the first 20 or the second 20 minutes, and they just don't have a good enough offense to keep up with that.
Yep, that's generally speaking the way it's been going for the LSU basketball team. They'll play tonight at 8 o'clock in the Assembly Center. Let's talk some baseball. They'll crank things up in earnest on Friday. It'll be a 4-day week, 5 games in 6 days for LSU until they head to Jacksonville. Starting pitching is the question everybody's asking. What's your general thought right now as to how Jay Johnson and Nate Yeskie will handle that in the first, call it the first 4 games, Friday through Monday?
Yeah, I think we talked about this maybe a little bit last week. I think Kason Evans, Cooper Moore, Zach Callen, Cooper Williams, maybe William Schmidt. Schmidt had a really awesome kind of dress rehearsal scrimmage this last weekend and looked really, really solid for most of that outing, and maybe he can find a way to slip into one of those 4 starts. But I think the Evans, Moore, Callen, Williams grouping is about what I'm thinking right now. Sorry, my dog's going off right now. Sorry.
It's all good. I do plenty of interviews with screaming 9-month-old in the background. It's just part of life.
Yep. All right, we're good. How are you going?
We're good. So, yeah, I mean, those 4, I think, make sense. Where do you think Schmidt fits in if he's not one of your first 4?
Well, they've been pitching him kind of more towards the back end of the weekends in these scrimmages. So I would say maybe, Sunday, Monday would be maybe where you could potentially see him start. But if he doesn't start, then, maybe a long relief outing would be good for him the first couple days just to kind of get his feet wet there. I think Maverick Rizzi is another candidate to do that. He's somebody that they've extended 2, 3, 4 innings over the preseason scrimmages as well. So I think those are maybe the 2 that you could go to for long relief. And there's a couple of really good options to close too. I mean, I think Devin Sheeran is a guy that has really they've really leaned into here the last couple weeks. They've given him a couple outings a weekend here over the last 2 weekends, and so he's somebody that can come in and get you maybe 3, 4, 5 outs. And then there's lots of talent on this roster, and I think these first. It's not only just 5 games in 6 days. I think it's 8 games in 10 days or something like that. So you're really going to get to test the depth of this pitching staff here, and I'm excited to see how many guys they throw and just how those guys respond to those opportunities.
Who do you think leads LSU in home runs this season?
Ooh, good question. I'm just trying to think here. I'm going to go with Jake Brown. I think Jake Brown's got some real pop to his bat. I think he's somebody that is going to be an everyday player for you. He's going to get a ton of opportunities at the plate. I think he's got some real unused power, untapped potential there in the power department that we haven't seen yet in his first couple of years. So I think Jake Brown is maybe a guy that just with the opportunities he's going to get at the plate, I could see him being somebody that gets to maybe 14, 15, 16, kind of in that range. I don't know that there's a 20 home run hitter on this team, but I think you have a lot of guys that can get up close to that 8 to 12 range, and then maybe a guy like Brown gets upwards of 15, 16.
Yeah, Jake Brown was 100 at bats short of Jared Jones last year. That's how much Josh Pearson kind of ate into that playing time. We know that the platoon is why, but there's your potential. And Jake Brown, he's got 100 more at bats to get to if they can play a long time into June. How do you feel about the infield defense?
Pretty good. I've been out there the last couple weekends, and I haven't seen many glaring mistakes. There hasn't been a whole ton of opportunity there to make mistakes either. I think that they've done a really nice job of just making the routine plays. I will say it's been really tough for these base runners to steal on Cade Arambidi. I mean, I think he's thrown out maybe 3 or 4 guys in the last several scrimmages that I've seen, on pickoff attempts, and I think that's a really good sign too if you're LSU to have a catcher like that who can get the ball out quick to second base and keep runners on the bag. So. But I think the infield defense has been really solid. There was I can't remember who it was. I think it was Jack Ruckert made a really nice diving play in the Sunday scrimmage, and that's just kind of points to your depth there. He was playing second base, and he made a really nice diving stab at a hard ground ball that was probably destined for the outfield, and made a nice throw over first base and made the play. So I think there's a lot of really highly talented defensive players on this team. It's just about really kind of carving out which guys are going to end up playing over there at second, because I think we have a pretty good idea of who's going to play the rest of the infield positions.
Do you have a significant concern or a biggest question mark on this team? We've kind of hit everything with starting pitching, relief pitching, defense, power. What do you think?
Yeah, I think probably for me it's going to be just the who can step up that maybe hasn't had an opportunity to step up yet. Like I think that there's a handful of really interesting sophomore players that are going to have to be obviously a huge part of this thing, but I think that there's a really interesting mix of freshmen too. Guys like Mason Braun or Omar Cerna. There's always seems to be a guy on these LSU teams that maybe we're not talking about enough in the preseason, who finds a way into the lineup or finds a way into the pitching rotation and really becomes a staple part of the offense or the pitching staff by the end of the season. And so I think that there are some players like that on this team. I think that's something that you'll certainly want to watch out for. But in terms of like direct concerns, I don't know that I have a whole ton right now. I mean, I would like to see them play a few weeks before kind of evaluating that, but I think they have the perfect blend of returning players from that championship team and then really interesting transfers and young players to kind of help round out the roster in a really, really, really interesting way.
So what's your gut tell you about this team? I mean, I'm not going to ask you to tell me they're going to win the national championship, but I mean, do you feel like this is a team that's got in it what 2 years didn't, to get off to a reasonable start and then to go make a push and at least get back to Omaha?
Yeah, I really do. I think that they have a lot of options, a lot of really talented players, a lot of guys who have been there and done that. And like I mentioned, it's just going to be about how much do these first to second year players really carry this team. Like I think Cade Arambidi is going to be one of the biggest X factors on this entire team, and I think William Schmidt has the potential to be that on the pitching side. And those are 2 sophomores that played some for you last year, but are going to need to take pretty significant leaps. If they do that, I think that there's a lot of really good talent and a lot of veteran talent with experience of guys that have played at this level before and done it. Certainly on the championship team from last year, but also from the guys that they got in the transfer portal. What does Caraway do with this opportunity in a full off season now with Jay Johnson and these hitting staff and just what his potential could look like over at third base. There's just a lot of really interesting players, I think, on this roster that are going to have an opportunity to really help carry this team to the ceiling. And I think that ceiling is probably going to be, hosting again in Baton Rouge and playing for a chance to go to Omaha.
We shall see. See you out of the box this weekend, Glenn.
All right. Thanks, Hunt.
Glenn West, senior writer for Go 24/7, team coverage, recruiting coverage. They got you covered over there at Go 24/7. Remind you, One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Look, it doesn't have to be a full-scale remodel renovation. They can do that for you. They can handle it soup to nuts, as David always says. Handle putting the tile on your floor back in, put in a new bathtub, put in a new shower. They can do lots of different things, and it can be an expansive renovation. They can also do something simple like a tub to shower conversion. Take your tub out that you never use, big, huge jacuzzi style tub that you don't use. Take it out and use that space, which is a lot, for a big walk-in shower. Right now, if you don't love the shower that you're in, you got a dingy old shower curtain and a bathtub you don't ever use, put in a gorgeous new shower. Changes the look and the aesthetic of your bathroom, changes the functionality of your bathroom, also adds value to your home. Call David. Get that free consultation online at onebathandclosets.com. Onebathandclosets.com is that website. They got financing options available. They got financing 0% up to 18 months over at onebathandclosets.com. Just a thought on opening day lineups. We just kind of tossed that out there with Glenn, and I started making some notes. I'll just kind of go. This is something I was going to hold for like Thursday. Kind of dive into it here to close out hour number 1 when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Fabry Chevrolet GMC, Highway 61 in St. Francisville, now under new ownership, Fabry family ownership. You know the Fabry family, 35 years in business here in Baton Rouge, 3 locations, 5 brands, online at FabryChevrolet.com. Look, if you're looking for a truck, there's no better time than to get in the market right now, February. Over at Fabry Chevrolet GMC, the Chevy Silverados, up to $11,000 off MSRP, 1.9% financing. Up to $11,000 off. GMC Sierras on the GMC side, up to $13,000 off MSRP or 0.0 APR. That's a great deal in this truck month over at Fabry Chevrolet. Get by and see him, Highway 61 in St. Francisville, or check him out online at FabryChevrolet.com, FabryChevrolet.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Closing up hour number 1 here. Opening day coming up on Friday, and we'll have lots more coverage. I've got position previews up at LouisianaSports.net. I've been doing them here as well, and I'll write a bold predictions piece tomorrow, and we'll talk about it on the show, and we'll get the lineup on Friday and have that in the first hour and talk about it. But one of the things that I love doing is just realizing when you see him unveil that lineup for the first time, it almost always has massive, massive changes by the time you get to the games that decide your season in June. And my favorite little nugget that I've tossed out every year this time, because I just think it's hilarious, is the designated hitter on opening day for the 2009 National Championship team was Chad Jones. Chad Jones went to play football in the spring, came back and was a relief pitcher by the end of the season, was certainly nowhere to be found in the everyday lineup. But he was the designated hitter on opening day. And for more recent seasons, like in 2023, it's a national championship team. Y'all know that team very well. Like Gavin Dugas and Cade Beloso were not in the lineup opening day. They were not in the lineup. On that day, Gavin Guidry was a freshman shortstop. He ended up throwing the last pitch of the season as a closer. So that's a massive, massive deal. On opening day 2024, Josh Pearson played second. He was the second baseman. Like, they quit that experiment pretty quickly. Stephen Milam ended up winning that job, and Pearson went back to the outfield, and that was that. But you didn't know that on opening day. Milam was an unproven freshman who had a bad fall. Last year, I went back and looked at last year's lineup because I didn't remember. I didn't have there wasn't one that immediately came to my mind. Like, I know those off the top of my head. I did not know this one. So I went back to last year's opening day lineup, and I went through and I went, I know that that's not exactly what it was because Pearson's DHing and Brown's in right. Who am I missing? Oh, Ethan Fry didn't start on opening day last year. You know, maybe the best hitter on the team. I mean, you could make the point that Ethan Fry was the best hitter on the team last year at the end of the season. When you look at the season-long statistics, Curiel hit 345 and Fry hit 331. But Fry hit 13 homers to Curiel's 7. It's what and what. Like, Curiel's season was better, but Fry was a really impactful bat, and he did not start on opening day. So when you look at the lineup that comes out on Friday and you start to go through and project how things are going to go for the season, almost always, there's a significant change or 3. And like, you know, to last year's team's credit, the 9 guys that started on opening day were huge pieces at the end of the season. Because even though Brown and Pearson were both in the lineup in that game and they ended up platooning in right, they were in the lineup every other game, and you just inserted Fry into that extra spot with one of them going to the bench. So it wasn't as if someone who was a starter just completely fell off the face of the earth. Like, y'all remember when Will Helmer started at third base on opening day, don't you? Third base. It's a pitcher. So things are always very, very different, and there's a guy that we're not talking about enough, and there's a guy that we're talking about too much. But that's the beauty of baseball season. That's the thing I love about baseball season, is that far more often than not, the roster shifts and swirls make the team take new shape. It doesn't happen as much in football. Like, every once in a while, a freshman kind of breaks through. Maybe there's a wide receiver who didn't play a lot in game 1. By game 10, he's way more involved. But you generally kind of keep the same thing all the way through, and you just got to play better. In basketball, like, sometimes a guy that didn't play much on opening night becomes a starter down the line, but more often than not, you know what 7 guys you're going to trust in a college basketball season, and you generally have the right 5 guys on opening night. In baseball, it can be wildly different, and I anticipate that probably will be. Like, if you made me guess, I'd say that either Omar Cerna or certainly Mason Braun makes a push here. The more likely thing, though, and we'll talk about this as the week goes on, is that of the guys that start on the mound Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's probably going to change moving forward. That's the biggest risk of significant change, I think. We'll see. That's it for hour number 1. If you missed it on demand, you can catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. Just search on Palmer Show. Hunt on LSU for your LSU coverage. Hunt on Saints for your Saints coverage. Still got a lot to do after national headlines for Sports Center. Come back with us for hour number 2.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Go take a tour at Marucci. Awesome spot here in Baton Rouge, and they started in the Backwoods Shed there in 2004. 22 years later, the official bat of Major League Baseball. So visit the wood shop that's responsible for the bats in the hands of Major League players of all ages around the world. To learn more, go to maruccisports.com/campus-tour. Take your youth baseball team. Take your youth softball team. Take your family. Go by yourself. It's such a cool, cool place here in our city of Baton Rouge. It's now an international brand. It's known everywhere in the baseball world. But its heartbeat's right here in Baton Rouge. And it's a cool place to go check out. So if you want to give your youth baseball or softball team a chance at a bonding experience to do something really cool, take them over to Marucci. Let them take some hacks in the cage. See where Major League stars' bats are born. It's Marucci. You can check them out online, maruccisports.com, maruccisports.com.